Welcome to the Come Up Starter Kit, guys. My name is Shankar and I have a very special guest with me today, Brendan Gahan, who is partner and chief social officer of Mechanism. Now, guys, we are in New York, and if you don't know, you don't know, but this guy is the godfather when it comes to social influencer. Like, if there's anything that you're going to learn something today, and it's going to be red hot. So thank you, Brendan, for joining me.
Oh, thanks for having me, and thanks for that epic introduction.
Look, I think what I know about Brendan and what I've done and what he's been doing on LinkedIn and just social media as a whole, he has been in the game since 2006, and he had the vision, he saw the light, and he has been steamrolling this game for a while. So I think that I'm really happy to have you on. I'm really excited because I think not only will I learn, but I think the audience as well is going to learn a whole lot. So thank you, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This will be fun.
How is New York at the moment? I know that because we've just gone into a hard lockdown. How is it over there?
I mean, it's not the most exciting place in the world right now. It's cold. There's a bunch of snow, and it's outdoor dining. Things close at 10, so it's pretty quiet. I mean, for New York. I mean, like anywhere else in the world, it'd be like, oh yeah, things are pretty bustling. But it's pretty quiet, and I think we're in New York. We're in an apartment, and it's I'd be lying if I didn't say it kind of sucked to be in an apartment all day.
True. For people that don't know, so you are a chief social officer and also a partner at Mechanism. If people don't know what a chief social officer is, how would you describe that? What that is?
Yeah. So as chief social officer, I oversee the whole social media team, and actually now I also oversee the media team. And so basically, our offerings, we do paid media, all the associated data, analytics, buying, et cetera. On the social specific side, we do community management, content creation, social listening, reporting, all the fun real-time activations, influencer marketing, and various kind of partnerships and stunts. And so that's kind of what I oversee. And then in terms of like my role as chief social officer, it changes every day. It's different, but it'll be a lot of the marketing and new biz. We connected over LinkedIn. The thought leadership stuff I love doing, but I think to a certain extent it's part of the job. And then oversight of existing accounts and kind of getting in the weeds occasionally on like certain projects. Guiding the team a little bit, although the team's amazing. I don't need that much. I feel like I'm probably mostly getting in the way. And then a little bit of sort of like the internal operations and there's I'm a partner. I've been a partner for I guess a little bit over a year now. So involved in like broader kind of strategic decisions, which is fascinating.
Okay. I guess for people that might not also know, influencer marketing, I guess that's thrown out like so much, right? But people don't even know what the breakdown of that is. And how would you describe what it is?
I mean, I think at its core, it's like influencer marketing is, and this isn't a grossly oversimplified definition, but I think it's like connecting brands to creators that have an audience. Yeah. That's like the gist of it. And brands are connecting with creators to get their message out there in a really credible way.
Yeah, 100%. Look, I wanted to deep dive into your career because you've got such a cool career. You've done so much. You're a pioneer in this space. Did you always know that you wanted to get into sales and marketing? Like, what was it, or advertising rather?
It's like in hindsight, it's like kind of, like one of my uncles, he got into advertising, and a bunch of my family was like in, art and creative space somehow. Right. And one uncle in particular, though, he worked at Wieden and Kennedy, did a bunch of like the Nike stuff, in the era growing up, you know, Jordan and all that stuff, the like heyday of it all.
Right.
And so in my eyes, he was like a celebrity, you know?
Right.
And so I always thought that was like the coolest thing. And I loved hanging out with him. And I just sit there and like pick his brain, like, show me this thing. What's this? Like, who did you meet? Like you met Jordan? What?
Right.
Like, it was awesome. So like,
Right.
I was very starstruck by it all. But I didn't know that it was like. It's like one of those things. It's like an idea, but you don't picture it as a career. It's almost like I was thinking of a career in the sense of like, I was thinking I'd either be like a psychologist, a lawyer, or a teacher. You know, very like cookie cutter things.
Yeah.
So you know, I think I'm always interested in like how people think, and so in that sense, it makes sense that I got into advertising. But I'd be lying if I said that like I sort of knew that was the career path. I think I admired my uncle who was in it,
Right.
but I almost didn't connect that like, oh, I could get into that too.
Yeah, right. So when you finish college and you try to get your first role in this space, how hard was it?
Okay, so full transparency, like, you know, there's some nepotism. Like that same uncle was very kind to me, and like, no joke, I was about to take a job as a teacher's assistant in my hometown, and like I basically I'm in hindsight, I think I had the offer, or I was like basically told I was going to get the offer. And then he called me, my uncle called me. He had started his own small ad agency. He was like, hey, you know, I know you're about to graduate. I've got this really smart guy on the team. He needs some help. We need somebody that's like young, that can just, you know, is like a little bit more digitally savvy, that could maybe go help him out. And so I was sort of at this crossroads, but like all of a sudden, like those memories of sort of like me as a kid kind of kicked in. And I was like, even like, you know, technically it was like way less money. It was like virtually no money. Right. But I was like, I think I should do that. It seems really exciting. So, I mean, that's how I got in. I'm very, very fortunate. I'm not at all oblivious to that.
But still, that's cool though, right? Like you're still at a crossroad between two different career paths, but you know, the one that you saw was the glory, I guess. And then you're like, yeah, let's go for that. True.
Yeah. It was very scary too, because my dad is, you know, he was an educator. He was like the head of special education in Ventura. And so like, I think, you know, there was a little bit of like, it wasn't pressure. Like my parents were pretty chill, but like education and a career in education is like very much a part of our family. And so it was kind of like weird to be like, oh yeah, I'll try this other route.
So that's actually a good point that you brought up, because even I guess, you know, growing up, we're always pressured to have that cookie cutter role, right? You know, lawyer, doctor, engineer, or whatever. And once you sort of stray away from going a different career path, you're sort of unsure because you don't, I guess you had your uncle, but you don't have too many other people that you can lean on. Was that scary for you?
Oh yeah, it was terrifying. And I think it was all the more terrifying as sort of like, so as my career kind of like, is that once I got into it, it was like almost like I had a hunch about sort of like the direction I wanted to take things. And that was really terrifying because it's like, it was you know, I really believed in like influencers. Like to me, like, I remember when I first heard how much a billboard cost, and like, I mean, I was a broke kid out of college. Like I had no money. Like, I mean, like literally, like I had nothing. I was very fortunate. My uncle like gave me an internship, but like I didn't have anything to my name. And like, I remember being like, that's how much a billboard costs. I could like just blanket the world with like message if I had that money. And like, and so I was like, it doesn't make sense that a billboard would cost that much when like, why don't we go and just like pay people on YouTube to
Yeah,
like
right.
get the message out there? And then, I did it, and then, did it again and again and again and again. And it was like always kind of starting from scratch, and like very small community of people who also sort of believed in it. And that part was really, was very hard at times.
So that was one thing that I actually really admire, because, you saw it back in 2006, right? And then you did your first activation at your first job. How do you even, convince people that this is the path? How do you even tell people, hey, I've got the vision and I think that influencers are going to be a thing? And you worked with like the likes of Smosh, which is huge.
Yeah. My first skill was with Smosh. Yeah, who up until I don't know, I think like 6 years ago or so, they were like #1 on YouTube.
Yeah.
I think I was really lucky in that I sold it in on a project. The stakes were very low. So like we were, no joke, like going to, I referenced this before, but like, I remember the moment, like I was in I was sitting at my desk and I heard the partners, at the agency talking behind me about how they were going to pass on this client, didn't have a big budget, it was going to be too much work, and we weren't going to make any money. And so I just like spun around in my chair and was like, guys, I've got an idea. Like, there are these kids on YouTube, they get millions of views every single time. Like, why don't we just offer them some of the money, and like we'll take the other, I can't remember the exact percentage, but like we'll take another percentage to sort of manage the process, and trust me, it'll be awesome. And they're like, well, we're open to it. Why don't you see if the guys would be into it? And so I emailed, no joke, I found like Ian and Anthony from Smosh, their emails on their MySpace page, and I emailed them, and then a couple hours later they replied, and we jumped on the phone, and then they drove down to the office a couple days later, and we just hashed out a deal in like 30 minutes.
So were you always connected to the technology space? Because how did you know that if you were to tap into these guys, that because obviously they had the views, but like no one was talking about YouTube back then, right? Like it was just seen as this sort of, like TV was everything. So how did you know that like this would be the thing?
I mean, I think part of it was just sort of what I was doing at the time. Like,
Yeah.
YouTube was exploding. I was watching YouTube. I feel like I remember the first time I saw a YouTube player. I'm pretty sure it was like on somebody's MySpace page, because like you would, embed it, and like I'm pretty sure I found it via an embed. And I remember being like, whoa, this is insane. And then like you delve in and you found the ecosystem, and at the time there were like all these charts, like most viewed of the day, most viewed in this category, most commented, and like this community started to emerge. And to me, it just made sense. Like I would just like look at like the numbers on the video. I'm like, okay, this many people are watching, this many people are commenting. Like these people have a rabid fan base. Like, why don't we go there? I've never seen anybody talk about a billboard. Like, so it was like the contrast made it, in my mind, it just was like very clear. But at the same time, I had a ton of like doubt, because it's like, I'm an idiot. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm like fresh out of college.
Right.
Nobody else is doing this, so like, why do I think I have any idea? Well, like what business do I have to, in suggesting anything here?
So you did your first activation, and then you moved right to Mechanism.
Yeah.
And so what did you start off at Mechanism?
I don't even remember my title. I think it might have been syndication supervisor or something like that.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It was, I mean, honestly, it was like a title. We didn't know what to call like social media. And syndication was the sort of like the rationale behind that title was like, well, we're creating content and we're trying to get it out into the world.
Right.
And so that was sort of like where that title stemmed from.
Okay.
But it was when nobody had a social media department, so we just didn't know what we were doing or what we were calling things.
And so then what would your day sort of look like when you're at Mechanism? How, you know, what were you doing day to day, and what would a day in a life look like?
Oh, back then?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I worked all the time. I like slept at the office. I like, no joke. I would be there. I would probably sleep at the office at least once a week. And any pitch, I was like, I want to work on it. I want to work on it. I want to build the deck. And I loved it. And I mean, I still do, but I was like, that was my entire world back then. But it was a lot of like, we were always doing a lot of pitching because at the time we were very project based.
Yeah.
So there's so much churn. And then it was a lot of like constantly strategizing, because Mechanism made and makes amazing content. At the time we were kind of like very early in terms of creating like branded content for digital and social. And so it was like constantly like trying to figure out like, okay, how do we get this message out in the world? How do we get this piece of content in front of people before any of the platforms had any paid tools? And so we were constantly like researching, building relationships, negotiating deals.
Right.
I mean, just like, it was a constant experiment and like a puzzle that every single day we were trying to figure out because there wasn't a playbook.
Yeah, right. And when you were going through that motion, did you have sort of, I guess, the leverage when you had worked with Smosh and then it made it sort of easier? Or was it still always a battle to try and say, hey, we need to start using influencers?
Yeah, nobody gave a shit.
Right. So it's always
nobody knew.
battle.
Yeah, nobody knew who Smosh was. And it wasn't until probably like 2013 where like influencers started becoming like acceptable and sort of well known in the sense that like you'd go in and like people wouldn't immediately be like, well, what's that? Explain it to me. You know, around that era, people were like, they knew what it was at least. And so you had a foundation to build upon.
So what did you sort of see were, I guess, the unique challenges? Because as a pioneer, you're always going to have these type of challenges. So what were the challenges that you would constantly face?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, I think probably the biggest one was just, you know, there's the professional side, which is selling it through, explaining it, that sort of thing, which, you know, honestly was a lot of repetition more than anything else. It was like, all right, like you just got to go in with like a long-term view. It'll take a while. We're going to go move along. We know it's the right thing to do. We're going to recommend it. And like, you know, hopefully they, you know, buy into our vision. So that was hard, but I think it was a lot of like, there was a lot of stress and self-doubt because it's you know, I remember having conversations with my boss at the time being like, I think I should be a digital producer because I don't see, like, nobody's making money in this aspect of the industry. Like, I don't see anybody like ahead of me that is doing this. And so in my mind, that meant like you know, this is where I'm capping out, you know? Right. And so I was like concerned about a long-term career. And so that was really hard. I really enjoyed it. It was very stressful, but I think that was one of the tougher aspects of it.
When you look back on it, is there any areas that you wish that you would have capitalized back then?
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Right.
I wouldn't necessarily say I have regrets because I don't like thinking about it through that lens, but I think, you know, I made a lot of great relationships, and I still have a lot of great relationships, but I don't think I necessarily invested in myself so much. And like, you know, and working with all these people, it's like, I think I should have shared more of that. And
what do you mean by that? What do you mean by like you would have shared more?
Well, like at the start of 2020, I started, you know, posting on LinkedIn every day and stuff, which is how we connected.
Yeah.
And I was just really sharing my thoughts. And I think that there was a little bit of, I mean, there always is a sense of imposter syndrome. Yeah. And I didn't want to be like that, like cliche sort of social media douchebag, basically.
Yeah, right.
So I would like deliberately like not talk about things.
Right. Was it, do you think it was due to maybe fear?
Oh yeah. Tons of fear, like fear on like every single, like, insecurity.
Yeah.
Fear of being judged, but also I think just fear of like, sort of putting yourself out there. It's, you know, it's a scary experience.
How did you build the courage to do it? Because someone like you have all the experience, the credibility, but still having that sort of that doubt in you. How do you overcome that?
I don't think you overcome the doubt. At least I haven't.
So true. Yeah, man.
like you saying that, I'm like, I don't like, that's not at all the way I perceive myself. I think I very much have like this mentality of like, I'm like I'm not good enough. I'm just like a piece of shit. I don't know anything. Like I gotta work harder. And I think, so that, you know, that's good in some ways. And I think it's like motivation, but, yeah, I mean, as far as like posting, I think I realized like, I'm not getting any younger. And like, I really, like, I think when I have a goal, I almost like just decide to sign myself up for it and then figure out how to get there after the fact. Because if I try and figure out how to get there, I'll talk myself out of it.
Yeah.
And so I kind of realized like that I had the goal of just like, I don't know exactly, but I think part of it is selfish and like maybe a little bit of like recognition, but then also like a creative outlet.
Yeah.
And so I was just like, I'll make it a goal to get over sharing my thoughts, because I would write all the time and never post it, by saying like, I'd post once a day on LinkedIn.
I guess now, you know, you see the vision, you see the light. How important do you think personal branding is now? Because, you know, I think that could definitely be, I think, a leading path to the future for a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I think personal branding comes with a lot of connotations that are like, people, it has a lot of baggage, and I get it, because like people think personal brand, they're like, oh, like it's like somebody who's, you know, I don't know, kind of bragging and selling something. But I think that's certainly some of what's going on. But I think another way to think about it is sort of like, by sharing your thoughts in public, it's almost like you're putting up a lighthouse and you're saying like, I'm here. Who else thinks this way? And like, you kind of pull people into your orbit, and vice versa. Cause like, you know, when you are more active, you see what other people are saying. And, that, I mean, you know, relationships are important, you know, like if people, and also like if people don't know what you do, they don't know what you do, and you're just like, you may as well not be doing it.
True. Yeah.
So I think it's important. I know for me personally, like me, just I'm new to all this, and but it's opened up a lot of doors, and I think it's been very fulfilling.
Look, I want to touch on that because you've been covering, a fair few platforms, LinkedIn, TikTok, and, even the way that you create. I like the content that you put out on LinkedIn. I love because you always back it up with data and it's always sort of visionary as well in where you're looking. When you are creating content, how much do you sort of rack your brain in terms of what to put out? Do you have a schedule or what's your sort of, I guess, your flow?
Yeah. Well, what I try and do, so I post on LinkedIn every day. I try and post on TikTok every day. Sometimes it's a little bit harder because it's video.
Yeah.
But the flow for like LinkedIn is usually first thing in the morning. I look at a handful of things. So like I'll look at the App Store, I'll look at YouTube trending, Twitter, and then maybe go through kind of the standard blogs that I read, and I'll see if anything is like, if there's anything sort of like any anomaly that can kind of like be like, oh, this is like not normal. Cause usually you open up the App Store, it's the same 10 apps,
Yeah.
On those days, there's something different in there. You're like, what the hell is going on there? And so those days are easy. When there's not, it's harder. You got to do research and stuff. But one thing that's really helped is, I've kind of developed an idea of sort of like how I view the world in terms of like social. And so like anything that aligns with that or does not align with that, I sort of have a framework to just kind of a framework or a lens to view it through, and a ton of supporting information for or against it. So like I keep everything I write in Evernote.
Right.
So there's like whatever, some new social commerce feature. It's like, okay, I'll just like in Evernote pull up like all the data that I collected on that, and so I can like very quickly compile supporting information. So Evernote's really like, the power of Evernote is great because it kind of compounds. The more you use it, the better it gets. And that's been really helpful. With TikTok, usually I'll jot down ideas throughout the week, and then one day I'll write out a bunch of scripts. If I've got enough content, I'll look at it again the next day and edit, and then film them all at once, and then edit them usually like one or two a day or something.
Right. All right. So let's jump back into the career side of it. You've been in this game for ages. You know it inside and out. What were some of the...
I lost you.
Oh, can you hear me?
Audio wise.
Oh, really? Can you hear me?
Yeah, that's weird. I don't know what happened. The audio just crapped out.
Oh, okay. Is it all good now?
Yeah, it's all good now. Sorry.
No, that's cool, man. You've been in the game for ages, and one thing that I've always wanted to know, I guess, what were some of your, I guess, best career advice in terms of trying to excel in your career?
I don't know about the best advice that I got, but I think the best advice that I could maybe give, which I assume I'm lifting this from someone, because it's something I definitely firmly believe. It's like in your industry, it's good to be kind of like, let me think about how to put this. It's like in social media, for example, there's a million people doing, brand management and account management and, ad buying and these sorts of things. If you're the best at that, is that a ton of value? Like, are you going to be able to get like a premium? Are you going to be able to like have a lot of leverage when you go? Because like ultimately, what's the difference between the very best person and the person that's maybe 10% below them? It's very hard to make that distinction. And so I think by focusing on the areas that aren't totally commoditized, and where you maybe think are like growing and you can be early in, then you, when you're early, it's kind of like you're a big fish in a small pond, and rising tide lifts all boats. And suddenly you're like now, you know, I'm talking about influencer marketing. I'm doing podcasts. Like I was in that when nobody believed in that. 15 years later, I'm doing podcasts about it. I wasn't doing podcasts about it 5 years after, 10 years after. Now I'm doing podcasts about it. You know?
So that's probably a good question to a segue. If a younger person is there, or just anybody in general is seeing sort of a gap in the market and thinks that is going to be the next trend or whatever have you, what advice would you give to your younger self, and what advice would you give to that person if they believe it and no one else does, but they need to convince the world, I guess?
I mean, I would say go for it. If, you know, depending on how risk averse you are, if you're risk averse, do it as an entrepreneur, if possible. If not, as an entrepreneur, and recognize that oftentimes, even if as an entrepreneur you build something and it's not like on paper successful, you learn so many skills that odds are it'll be really valuable anyway. So like even a failure, you're gonna like do all right in most circumstances. So yeah, I would also add that, like, you know, evaluate it and be like, do I think this is a growth area, or is this something that's like it's reached its ceiling? Because if it's a growth area, it almost doesn't even matter if you're like not the best at it, if you're just okay, like, because it's such a small pool of people. If you're okay and you just get 1% of a market that, you know, 100x's, well, then that's pretty great.
Yeah. You touched on a really good topic as well. People scared to fail, you know, whatever it may be, like whether they think it or jump into it. I think for me, I think any failure is a good learning. I think it's not failure, it's just learning, and, you know, you grow from that. For people that you think that may be scared or stuck or scared to fail, would you have any advice to them?
Yeah, I mean, I think fail faster is like a good one. Like I think, like, you know, I can speak to my experiences and, like, you know, kind of overcoming that imposter syndrome with content creation. Like when I started my TikTok, whatever, 6 months ago, I hated being on camera. You know, it was horrible. It was awful, difficult experience for me. But the thing that sort of let me go and post videos that I knew weren't great was this idea that it's like, it's part of the process with anything to be bad at it at first. And like, the sooner you get the crappy ones out of the way, the sooner you get to the good ones. And that's just like, I mean, you do that with anything in life. And I don't know, there's not really, like, generally, at least in my experience, maybe because I don't know. Maybe I'm not, I'm like the type of person that generally beats their head against the wall to like get something done. I don't find that, like, there's a lot of like hacks or like workarounds or shortcuts. It's like, no, like most things, you just gotta like grind it out.
and that's honestly it. Like, even for me, when I started, like, I was literally filming from an iPad, but I think once you see progress, you want to do better.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, like, that's awesome. Like, starting out with an iPad, like, that's great. Cause like, I could totally picture, I bet you were like, well, I only have an iPad, I don't want to film with that. But like, doing that, you know, and giving yourself permission to do that is so, I think, liberating. And then you're like, each one is a learning experience. Well, like, okay, I'm just gonna make the next one a little bit better. I'm gonna make this tweak, that tweak. Like there's no way, it's impossible to come out of the gates with like a fully formed like format or whatever it is. It will not happen.
Yeah. I've even watched interviews with you and how your backgrounds have changed. You've got now the backlight at the back and it's darker. So I've seen the progress, man, right?
Yeah. I
And
mean, yeah, I always try and make like little tweaks and not stress about like trying to solve it all at once.
I guess for people that are watching and they are like, oh, wow, look, I wouldn't mind a career in social media, influencing, advertising. What for someone wanting to pursue a career in this space, is there advice that you could potentially pass on or just sort of say, hey, look, these are the type of skills that you may potentially need?
Yeah, I mean, I would say identify a niche within social media, because right now social media is very big. It's many elements of it are saturated and well established. So think about, you know, kind of going back to what we were talking about earlier. What's that thing nobody else is talking about? And don't worry about like, oh, well, there's not like, I'm not going to appeal to everyone. Like, no. Like, try and identify a sub segment. You know, even with TikTok, it's like TikTok is still growing rapidly. There are a bunch of TikTok talent agencies and managers, but like you can still carve out a niche within that. There's not at least I haven't come across one like the TikTok mom talent network. There's not the, you know, whatever insert blank talent network. There's a lot of niches, and so by simply focusing, you can differentiate yourself as sort of like the brand for whatever this is. Like any brand that wants to work with, you know, moms on TikTok, suddenly you become the guy because you're not a TikTok talent manager.
Right.
You're the mom vlogger TikTok talent manager.
Right. I also wanted to, now you've had an extensive career, and then now you also went out on your own, started up Epic Signal, was there for 7 years. What was that transition like? You being like, well, look, I'm not going to work for the man anymore. I'm going to do it myself. How scary was that?
Yeah, it was pretty terrifying. I'm not going to lie. I was terrified every single day, to be honest. That's why I sold it. Yeah,
but you've got to have balls. Like you would have had like to back yourself to be like, hey, look, I think I can do this. That's cool.
Well, sort of. I wouldn't describe myself that way. Thank you, though. I'll take it. It was more like I quit my job and I thought I was going to like freelance and consult and stuff like that. And so I started with some, you know, working with some brands and on some projects, and the work kind of just kept coming in. So I was like I'm not very good at saying no to things, and like there was just like opportunities I was really excited about, and so I was like, I don't want to pass this up. Like I would way rather hire someone and like have that like open myself up to more opportunity. And so I did that, and then I did that again and again, and you know, and so on. You know, we weren't that big. It was like a 5-person team, but
that's still big for me. I think that's huge. That's huge, dude. Like it just going out on your own and doing it. I think that's huge. Like I think you can be a small person with small number of people and just kill and dominate. So yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah, when you're small, like that's a huge strategic advantage. You can move fast. You've got low overhead. Like you can take on projects that are small and make a great, you know, you can make great money. So like, it's not bad. Yeah. It can be a huge advantage.
And was it why? Because obviously now you're a partner at Mechanism. Was there, was it the fear side that you wanted to sell up, or what made you want to sell the business?
I don't, at that stage, I think it was, I mean, fear definitely played a role into it, but I also think it was like an element of like, I was just exhausted. I, I was really proud of sort of like the client roster and the work we were doing, but I was spending more and more time dealing with like, you know, um, the accountants and like all that stuff and like back office. And like, I remember just being like, every little thing, you know, you get sucked into and it pulls you away from the things that like you started out wanting to do.
Right.
So for me, it was really about the ability to focus my time on something that I was a little bit more passionate about. Because I didn't necessarily start out with the hopes of building a business per se. And I didn't really have an ego around like, oh, I got to be like a, you know, the founder, you know, the CEO of this thing. Like that stuff didn't really, I don't know, like it's cool, but I'd way rather have like a team to support me so I can sleep at night.
Right. Can I ask what, Matt, because you've done it all, and in terms of your highest achievement, like Forbes 30 under 30, that would, like, you've got that would be like, so many people aspire to that. So for someone that's done so much, what would you say that your highest achievement is?
Like career-wise?
Career-wise, yeah. Well, career and personal. Man, I'm happy to go both.
Gosh, I mean, the Forbes 30 under sorry, I don't know why. The Forbes 30 under 30 thing was cool. But honestly, like you know, I wanted that. Like I got it. And like you're pumped for like a second and then you're like, nothing changes. Like you sit down and you like you're doing the same work you were doing a moment before you got it. Which I think was actually really good to recognize. It did not change my life in any, I mean, I'm sure it had some impact, but there's nothing like I can point to that's like, oh, my life is easier or better directly because of this. With that personally, the best thing about that was like, you know, my parents were proud. And like they kept that Forbes magazine on our coffee table for years. So that was really cool.
That's cool.
Yeah. I mean, you know, other than that, I don't know, like, personally, it's been good. Like, I think I was really proud of the fact that, like, you know, in the last few years, it's like, you know, having sold Epic to Mechanism and stuff, it's like, you know, I don't have a lot of expenses. Like, I live with my fiance, I don't have kids and like all that. And so like being able to sort of do things for my family and like that kind of thing was like, that stuff is really cool. But like, other than that, there's nothing like that exciting, I would say, that I can point to that's sort of come from the career stuff.
Yeah. Okay. What does the future hold for you? Where do you want to, you know, what hold? Yeah, I guess, what is the future for Brendan?
It's a good question. I don't know. I just like, to be honest, I like doing, I think on the advertising side and social media side, I like being given a challenge and there's not a path that's sort of been paved. Before it's like, I want to figure out a puzzle because I want to be the one to figure it out. Oh, go ahead.
No, keep going. Sorry. I'll ask this question after because it's going to spin off.
I was just going to say, yeah, I mean, I'm terrible with process. Anything like process, I'm just like not good at it. And I don't, so if the path has been sort of worn and there's a set way of doing things, I generally am not inclined to sort of go down that route.
And so with that, because you, I guess, pioneered influencer marketing back then, are you always chasing the next thing? Are you always trying to find that new thing? And is it like a driver for you?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Right.
Like my favorite thing is like brand does first blank, like that's like the thing that I'm always like, when we're working on things, like those are the ideas that like I'm always trying to like push across the table. Like, what? Like, there's this new feature. Can we like do this? Like that kind of thing.
Right. And I guess from what you've learned throughout your career, if you knew it back then and it would have helped sped up your progress, what do you think that would be?
I mean, I think probably, certainly just knowing that like this would turn into a very real industry would have made a world of difference.
Right.
And I think I probably would have invested in a little bit more in, honestly, probably thought leadership around it.
Right.
I think that, and I think that would probably be the biggest thing. I think I would have slept a lot better, knowing what I know now, because I like, no joke. I had multiple conversations with my boss early on, being like, I don't know, like I think I need to do something else. You need to give me another role because I don't think I'm gonna have a job.
Right. But like for me, like, I look to you when, when it comes to this type of this space, like I know, like in terms of sort of you putting content out was fresh, but I think, man, what you're doing and you keep doing it, you'll snowball like no tomorrow.
Oh, thanks, man. I mean, like, I really appreciate that. Like, it's, I don't know, all the like thought leadership stuff is like very new to me, and it's like, I still get I'm like so excited to like hear stuff like that.
Oh, 100%, man. Like if you can, I think, you know what I think it is? I think it's fear. I think everything is based down to fear and like imposter syndrome and just like, especially when like written content is one aspect, but then when you start putting video content, then it's like, you're in a very vulnerable state and, you're leaving yourself open for like all negativity. So how strong are you emotionally? Because, I think a lot of people that hide away from putting content out, they're just like what you would call keyboard warriors, but people actually putting themselves out there, that's a different game. Like that is a different space, different game. And I can understand because I've always wanted to do video content, but I have been so scared to put it out. Like I've always wanted to do YouTube. I've always wanted to do it, but I've been paranoid and scared. But I think sometimes,
What was that first? What was the deciding factor for you? Like, what was that first one like, and what made you do it?
So I'll give you. So what happened? So last year we were made redundant due to COVID, and I'm like, you know what? This is something I've always wanted to do. I'm going to do it. I put one video up on LinkedIn, and I closed my laptop, and I went for a 2-hour walk. I'm like, I'm not going to even look. I'm just going to see, because I was so scared. I was so scared because I'm like, I don't know what people are going to say, think, do. And I was having all sorts of reactions. But when you put it out, it's really not that bad. But I still get scared even today.
Oh yeah, me too. And it is interesting. It's like each time you're trying something a little bit new, like the fear comes back. Like doing these things, it's like, it's interesting. Like people who have reached out to me because of my LinkedIn, I'm almost like scared to like jump on the phone with them or like do like something like this, because I'm always like, oh well, like when I write, I have the time to sit and think through my thoughts. Like I feel like I'm like, oh, I'm gonna come across like an idiot. Like when I'm talking,
it's a real thing.
Time.
It's a real thing. It is such a real thing. But man, I think, I look up to you when it comes to this space. So I think like you've got to keep going. because you will snowball, man. Because just the content that you put out, because it's different content that you put out. It's backed with data, right? Not everyone like, fair play to any content creator, but I like the fact that you back it up and, you know, you leave room for discussion, which is good.
Oh, thanks. I really appreciate that. That's awesome.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Any last advice, I guess, for people that may just want to be in this space, want to build a career in this space, and if you could do it all again, what would you do?
Yeah, I mean, I think the best advice, I mean, I definitely think that whole sort of, you know, focus on the emerging area that you believe in is really important. I would also add that just like do what you want to do before somebody pays you to do it.
Yeah.
It's like probably the other thing, because like, especially now, social is pretty saturated, and there are a lot of people getting paid to do it, you know, at agencies and brands and stuff. But like, you know, people, you need to give people an excuse to hire you. And so like, you can't just walk into a room and say, well, like, no, I've never, you know, whatever. I've never posted anything on Twitter. I've never posted anything on TikTok. And people will just believe you the way you believe in yourself. Like, you need to show people, because, you know, they've got bosses, and bosses can be like, oh, well, why are we hiring this person? You can't be like, well, they told me they'd be good at it. It's like, well, show me some proof.
So true.
You know, it's like this. I think it's really just like make other people's jobs a little bit easier, like anticipate their needs, and you'll be fine.
Yeah. Now, if people want to connect with you, if people want to get in touch, how do they get in touch with you?
All right, I'll do some shameless plugs. Thank you.
Man. Sure.
Well, you can find me anywhere on social. My handle is Brendan Gahan, BrendanGahan. I've also got a website, you know, a blog, BrendanGahan.com, and I'm really trying to invest in my newsletter and sort of building a community there. So I think, you know, if you're just going to pick one, that would probably be my ask, but whatever your platform of choice is, I'm probably there.
I'll put all your links anyway in the description as well, so
you.
people can get in contact with you, man. But thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you. This was really fun, man. You're great at this.
This was good. I was, here, I'll give you some, I was nervous to interview you.
Oh,
I was
really?
like, yeah, man. I was like, oh my God. I was speaking to my wife and I'm like, I'm interviewing Brendan. I cannot believe it. So I was super hyped.